Number 10. Megan Fox. Megan has been featured in several films over the years, but it was an interview about her time working with Michael Bay on the set of the Transformers movies that canceled her career for good. The original live-action Transformers movie came out in 2007 and co-starred Megan and Shia LaBeouf in the leading roles. It was a fun movie on screen, but behind the scenes there was a ton of tension on set. According to Megan, who had previously worked with Michael on Bad Boys 2, working for Michael was like working for Schmittler. Fun fact, if you add sh to someone's name, you can say it online. Loophole. Of course, Michael didn't appreciate being compared to, you know, one of the worst men in human history, so many speculated that her being left out of third Transformers movie may have had something to do with behind-the-scenes drama. She went on to call him bland and claimed that he had no personality or social skills of any kind. Like, hey Megan, that's just a little bit harsh. It's a little personal. When the comments were made public, her career began to slowly suffer. Not only was she written out of the Transformers series, but she was forced to make a public apology and actually retract her statements following the massive slew of backlash from fans. She took a few years off, but Michael himself later acknowledged the misstep on Megan's part and not only accepted the retraction, but the pair were able to patch things up and work together on the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies from 2014. Yay! Number 9. Cara Delevingne. Cara is a gifted actor and overall seems like a solid human being. So much like the rest of us, she gets tired and annoyed from time to time. Unfortunately, that feeling took place on live TV while promoting her new movie, Paper Towns. While making an appearance on the early morning show, Good Day Sacramento, the interview did not get off to a great start. The program's anchor called her Carla, and she then spent the next few minutes trying to get info out of Cara, but was failing miserably. Falling deep into the anchor role, she pulled out the old, hey, wow, that's amazing. Hey, listen, Carla, did you read the book that this thing's based on, or did you even have time to read because you're so busy? She was having none of that. She was very sarcastic with each answer to the fairly generic questions. Do you relate to the character? What was your favorite moment? Blah, blah, blah. It was then that a third anchor abruptly popped in and asked Cara if she was exhausted, as she seemed a bit more excited to speak about the project a few weeks prior in London. She giggled and said, no, I'm fine. Apparently, the premiere of the film was the night before, which she claimed to feel like the end of an era. But the anchors do not know when to quit. In fact, one of the anchors then suggested that she may be irritated, or maybe it was just them. They then cut the interview short and told her to take a nap and get a Red Bull. She can be heard saying, oh my god, too far, before the news anchor screeches over her and shuts her down. According to Cara, there was really no bad blood. She was just sick of answering the same questions over and over again. Following the interview, the man who popped up and gave his 2 cents was fired for causing such a tense situation on live TV. Number 8. Mike Tyson. Now, I had trouble landing on just one interview to mention when it comes to Mike. He's someone who seems to bounce back even after the most heinous of controversies, so we're just gonna run down through a few good ones. The first time Mike really hurt his career was in the late 80s, and it wasn't even something that he said. He was doing an interview with his then girlfriend Robin Gibbs when the topic of Mike's behavior came up. She said herself that Mike had an extremely volatile temper, and recently reports had surfaced of Mike getting loud and physical with her. Something she seemingly confirmed while Mike was just staring the interviewer down the entire time. Very intense. That was the first little notch on his belt, but as the years went by, more and more controversy came to light. During a press tour for his latest bout in the early 2000s, he lashed out at a fan in the crowd, hurling a slew of insults at him and calling them the British word for cancer sticks. It starts with an F and it rhymes with maggot. The clip became viral overnight and placed his career even further into jeopardy than it already was. But he finally drove the nail into the coffin on CP24 breakfast television in 2014. After somehow maintaining enough relevance to get a one-man show, Mike was sitting down with host Nathan Downer to promote when the interview took a hard left and went from, so what's the show about, to, so should you even be allowed on stage, you monster? That's not what he actually said, but that's what Mike heard. He stopped answering the questions honestly, and he would instead hurl insults sarcastically. The F word is once again his favorite. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mike hasn't been on the news much since that day, and for very good reasons. Number 7. Rachel Zegler. Rachel Zegler's comments about the upcoming live-action Snow White remake could have a huge impact on ticket sales, according to branding experts. The 22-year-old actress has received plenty of backlash after she admitted that she hated the original 1937 movie and branded the storyline weird, while referring to the Prince character as just a straight up stalker. The backlash occurred after several videos of Rachel speaking negatively about the original film in various interviews last year resurfaced online, where she talked about her version of the character. She said she's not going to be saved by the Prince and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. While Disney may just be trying to modernize the classic, the comments were causing her to be labeled a fake feminist, with some critics accusing Rachel of gaslighting, and one marketing consultant has warned that Disney will need to be careful on how they have portrayed Snow White. Snow White has already been suffering from backlash well before Rachel made her comments. Peter Dinklage spoke out about Disney not using dwarf actors for the new film, instead opting to use heavy CGI on Hollywood elites. Rachel's role as Snow White is currently up in the air, because while the film is set to be released in March of next year, the writer's strike may be the exact situation that the studio needs to recast and rewrite its oldest character. Number 6. Liam Neeson. Liam may have spent a long time as a dramatic action star, but his most dramatic moment yet came during an interview published by The Independent. He was promoting his new film Cold Pursuit, which follows his character seeking retribution after his son is slain. When he was asked how his character turns to anger, he replied by telling them something primal kicks in when someone close to you is a victim of violence. He then shared a true story about a close friend of his admitting to a physical altercation with another man a few years prior. When he heard the news, he said something took over him. When he asked her if she knew what his name was, she said no, but she knew what color his skin was. After using some very offensive language to describe this man, Liam then admitted to spending the next week carrying around a small baton and praying that, quote, a random black man would cross his path. The article began circulating fast, and Liam received a tidal wave of backlash. Since 2019, he has starred in a few films, but nothing as high budget or universally liked as his previous roles. Number 5. Katherine Heigl. Kathy was riding high back in 2007. The former Grey's Anatomy star not only won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a Dramatic Series, but she also began transitioning into the big screen with the success of her first feature comedy, Knocked Up, alongside comedy legend Seth Rogen. Unfortunately, her rise to the top quickly became a free fall into a volcano following an ill-fated Vanity Fair interview the following January. In the interview, Katherine made a move that still has people scratching their heads to this day. She openly bashed the film that made her famous, claiming that it painted women as shrew, humorless, and uptight, while also placing blame on Seth for writing the men as lovable, goofy, fun guys. The film still sits at an impressive 89% on Rotten Tomatoes because while she may claim that the project was problematic, the final product was a fun love story filled with some pretty solid jokes and performances and a great story. Seth felt betrayed by the comments as they never had a fight on set, and it never seemed like she was uncomfortable at any point. These comments, combined with some negativity towards her Grey's Anatomy writers, caused her agents to drop her as a client, and her time in Hollywood slowly came to a halt. These days she stars in the CBS comedy Our House, but it's looking like she may never return to the big screen. Number 4. Brie Larson. Brie was announced as the newest member of the Marvel Universe in 2019, starring in the film Captain Marvel as the titular superhero. At first, people were pretty excited to see what Marvel would do with this property. Captain Marvel is, after all, one of the original cosmic heroes in comic book canon, and I know I'm a nerd, leave me alone. However, when the movie was actually released, fans were pretty upset with Brie's performance. According to them, she was stale and seemed bored from start to finish. When asked about the online hate at the D23 red carpet in 2022, Brie said she's not sure if she's going to continue to play the character beyond her upcoming Captain Marvel sequel, The Marvels. She's aware of all the hate surrounding her character and defends that role by telling people that's how she was told to play the role. But it's also Brie Larson. She's always been stiff, but that's kind of part of why it's funny. Go watch Scott Pilgrim, you ninnies! Overall, she doesn't sound as terrible as some of the other entries on this list, but the way she has responded to interviewers in the past has pegged her as a Miss Marvel meanie. Number 3. Paula Abdul. In 2012, famous judge and British bad boy Simon Cowell decided to fire his fellow X Factor judge after she went on Fox News and made herself sound just a little bit like a fool. During an interview with Q13, things start out a little rocky thanks to some audio issues causing Paula to hear a station in Texas instead of the one that she was trying to talk to. When they eventually got everything up and running, Paula was just as confusing as she was with the original audio issue. The interviewers were trying to ask her her about her visit to Seattle, where Simon claimed that the worst singers he has ever encountered dwell. But instead of defending the city, Paula doubled down and agreed with Simon. But it's not the statement though that landed her in the hot seat, it was the way she was speaking. Paula had always been a little bit animated in her life, using her arms a lot when speaking to people, but she was particularly slurry and she seemed like she was under the influence of something. This was just one of several interviews where Paula was noticeably woozy. Simon's actually claimed that the only reason she was invited to host on the X Factor in the first place was to see that if she would bring in the American Idol viewers. When that didn't pan out, he realized that the right move to make was just to let her go and move on to greener pastures. Of course, Paula was mad about this and confronted Simon several times, only digging herself further and further into that hole. Number 2. Tom Cruise. Matt Lauer is not just a terrible man who turned out to be a creepy creepo. He was once a popular talk show host in the early 2000s. During an interview with Tom Cruise in 2005, the topic of his scientific beliefs came up that quickly sent Tom into a rant about psychiatry. Somehow the topic got into Ritalin and pseudosciences. I don't know. Tom yelled at Matt about knowing more than him about psychiatry. Like he had some inside information that he was secretly a therapist or something. The interview came at the height of Tom's very public descent into chaotic badness, becoming very famous for his outlandish beliefs and his wish to push them onto other people. The highlight of the interview came when Cruz was asked about his previous criticism of Brooke Shields taking anti-sad time pills, to which he responded by calling her a glib. And I looked up the definition. That means fluent and voluble, but insecure and shallow. This was only one of several interviews from 2005 that we could discuss today. When he was with Katie Holmes, he was a bit of a nutcase. Just ask Oprah Winfrey. Ever since the mid-2000s, Tom's career has been mainly in the Mission Impossible movies, with only a few small roles to fill the gaps here and there. Not the Hollywood superstar that he was aiming to be. And at number 1, Lance Armstrong. 7-time Tour de France winner Lance Armstrong has gone down in history as a man who was unable to ride a bike without his chemical training wheels. In an interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2013, Lance was brought on to discuss the allegations floating around regarding his status as a Tour de France winner. Several sources claimed that Lance had taken performance-enhancing substances to win each of his races, as well as a type of transfusion involving the red life juice that flows inside all of us. Armstrong went on air and fessed up to every single thing that they were claiming he had done. However, he did deny the notion that he was some kind of a mastermind who would control his teammates and force them to join in his extracurricular activities. But amidst his admission of guilt, say that 10 times fast, there was a moment where he tried to pin the situation on his battle with cancer. He wraps it up by saying that he should have tried harder to cancel the culture rather than create more of a problem. He was stripped of all 7 Tour de France titles, and he has since lived in exile among the cycling world. Number 10. Zac Efron. Zac rose to fame as a Disney darling, playing the leading role of Troy Bolton in the popular High School Musical series. Since his Disney days, Zac has lent his face and voice to several projects, but the red carpet event that we're talking about today was for the animated Dr. Seuss movie The Lorax, which Zac, who voiced the main character of the film, was walking the red carpet when he suddenly handed his assistant something from his pocket. As he handed them the product, something fell out of his pocket and onto the carpet. Now that something is a word that I can't say online. Let's just call them love tubes. Love tubes. I like that. Zac's love tube wrapper was flat on the carpet right there for the world to see. He quickly picked it up, but the damage had already been done. In the first interview following this incident, the interviewer asked Zac if there was anything unplanned that had happened. He then explained that this was a complete accident. There was no pre-show pocket check or anything that could have prevented it. Well, Illumination did not like that excuse, and they also didn't like their main star being associated with such an adult product. So, when the plans for a Lorax sequel were brought to the studios, Zac's name was left out and replaced by somebody else. I guess whoever they picked wasn't famous enough though, as the project was ultimately shelved by the studio, and thankfully Zac found work somewhere else. In Baywatch. Number 9. Taylor Swift. If there is one thing that should be known about Taylor Swift, it's that she can end an entire career with one single conversation. In 2015, Taylor was on the red carpet for the Grammy Awards when she was interviewed by a woman from Entertainment Tonight. The interviewer started the interview by asking her cameraman to pan up and down and literally checking her out as this massive camera just followed her. You know, that's not weird at all. After going along with the bit for a bit and telling the camera about her dress, the woman who was interviewing her said that she honestly just wanted a shot of Taylor's legs because she said before the show that Taylor is going to be going home with more than a trophy. Maybe a man. Ooh. Taylor didn't appreciate that comment or that assumption. She did not laugh and proceeded to tell her that she would be going home with no men, just hanging out with her friends and then home to her cats. While the majority of the interview went well, the interviewers were reprimanded behind the scenes by Taylor herself. The news of Taylor's dislike for them made its way up to the top, where the ET executives decided to keep him off the red carpet from now on. Keep your creepy camera gestures to yourself, lady. Number 8. Rachel Zegler. Rachel Zegler's comments about the upcoming live-action Snow White remake could have a huge impact on ticket sales, according to brand experts. The 22-year-old actress has received plenty of backlash after she admitted that she hated the original 1937 movie and branded the storyline as weird, while referring to the Prince character as a straight-up stalker. The backlash occurred after several videos of Rachel speaking negatively about the original film in various interviews last year resurfacing online, where when she spoke about her version of the character, she said that she is not going to be saved by the prince and that she is not going to be dreaming about true love. As well as being labeled a fake feminist, some critics have accused Rachel of gaslighting, and one marketing consultant has warned that Disney will need to be very careful with how they have portrayed Snow White. Snow White has already been suffering from lots of backlash well before Rachel made her comments. Peter Dinklage spoke out about Disney not using true dwarf actors for the new film, instead opting to use heavy CGI on Hollywood elites. Rachel's role as Snow White is in the air as of filming this video, because thanks to her comments, the studio is rethinking the situation. While the film is set to release in March of next year, the writer's strike may be the exact moment that the studio needs to recast and rewrite its oldest character. Number 7. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is known for his hilarious personality on and off screen, but he gave Kat Sadler from E! News and Daily Pop a very awkward interview on the red carpet at Harper Bazaar's party in 2017. The interaction started with Jim slowly circling Kat as she attempts to express her confusion and excitement. Jim Carrey was at a Fashion Week event. Was the man known for being an incredible artist, bringing his talent to the fashion world? No, he was just really mad about stuff. By 2017, Jim had made a name for himself as an oddly serious man who tended to venture into the realm of energies and universal concepts when getting into deep conversations. He started the conversation with, "This is meaningless." And then he continued to say that he wanted to find the most meaningless thing that he could attend that evening. The event was a celebration of icons and celebrities, according to Kat, to which Jim said he did not agree, as in he didn't agree with the concept of icons. He continued to give a small speech about not believing that people truly exist, and that we are all just a field of energy, and that peace lies beyond personality, man. The entire time this interview is taking place, Kat is visibly uncomfortable, just counting down to the moment that Jim says something funny or even remotely related to fashion. Instead, he just shares his thoughts, tells her that she has a nice fragrance, and walks away. While Jim's career had already started to slow down at that point, the clip became viral and studios were wondering if he was going to be a good fit for anything anymore. Many scripts with his name on them were rewritten or simply just kept to themselves, right up until 2020 when he made a small comeback in the surprisingly fun Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Number 6. Will Smith. That's right, Will Smith is on this list for hitting somebody, and it's not Chris Rock. Today we're talking about an incident on the red carpet that left one paparazzo with a massive red mark on his face and a fired sign stamped on his forehead. Will was walking the red carpet giving people interviews when a Ukrainian comedian named Vitaly Sejic approached him, a man who is unfortunately world famous for being an absolutely disgusting person towards celebrities. He pretended to be a reporter and began interviewing Will Smith. He suddenly pulled Will towards him and tried to kiss him on his cheeks and mouth. Well, Will obviously did not like that and shoved him back and gave him a little love tap. Just a little backhand to the face. A team of security following Mr. Smith picked this guy up and carried him away like a little toddler that he was. Who knew Will was practicing for his Oscar slaps all the way back then? Sejic was finally reprimanded for his actions, and he was actually made to pay a hefty fine for attempting to force himself on Will Smith. Needless to say, that guy works for himself now. Number 5. Hugh Grant. In 2013, the world was gifted with an awkward interview between model Ashley Graham and Dungeons & Dragons star Hugh Grant. Ashley was trying her best to give a good interview and asked Hugh the hard-hitting questions, like who was he wearing? Was he excited to be there? Did he hope anyone he knew won? You know, good old generic questions they tell you to ask on the first day of work. Hugh was not budging, to the point where she just kinda gave up and let him loose. One of her last questions to Hugh was regarding his cameo in the Netflix film Glass Onion, which he said was barely a full day on set. The incident sparked a ton of backlash, mainly aimed at Hugh for making Ashley's job more and more difficult. But then the narrative switched to, why wasn't she asking him better questions? ABC decided to give the hosting gig to somebody else for next year's Oscars, and it's looking like she won't be making any more interview appearances anytime soon. Number 4. Amy Schumer. In the mid-2010s, comedian Amy Schumer was named one of Time magazine's top 100 most influential people and was made to attend a red carpet event to celebrate with her fellow influencers, two of whom were Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. Now, while discussing the incident on the Graham Norton show, she revealed that there was a planned prank on Kim and Ye. Her goal was to get them to crack and smile and get some good fun pics for the event, but Kim and Kanye did not find this situation funny and continued to walk past her as she fell in front of them. Like she just followed forward trying to make a nice little thing out of it. While the moment was meant to create a fun scene, it instead made Amy look like she had a grudge towards Kim and Kanye. While not an interview, the incident on the red carpet did force Comedy Central to postpone a season of her show until things were sorted out with Kim. It turned out that not only did Kim not care, but she did end up finding the incident kind of funny in the end, with these two apparently now being close friends, and Amy even made a cameo on Kim's new reality series, The Kardashians. Number 3. Rashida Jones. The star of comedy giants like The Office and Parks and Rec is an expert at evading uncomfortable and just strange questions. During the Screen Actors Guild Awards in 2015, she was being interviewed by TNT's Danielle Dembski when the actress was told she was very tanned. Well, Rashida replied with a small pause and then told the reporter that she was ethnic, so, you know, duh. Danielle burst into laughter before ignoring the dumb question and moving on, but TNT did not forget. Her producers made it very clear that she needed to do more research before making comments or asking questions to anyone on the carpet. According to TNT, she was let go after the meeting went south and Danielle didn't realize what she had done wrong. Gee, let me think! Number 2. Silka Sibin. While attending the Dutch premiere of his rom-com Music and Lyrics, Hugh Grant, making another appearance, got the shock of a lifetime after a fan got a little bit too excited and took their admiration to a whole new level. Television journalist Silka Sibin approached Grant and he thought it was an interview, but then she handcuffed herself to him. For about 10 minutes, the patient but frustrated Grant was just waiting and watched as several onlookers started snapping pictures left and right. After the fire department finally released them, Sibin was taken by police. And while this may have seemed like your average Hollywood interaction, the news station that she worked for did not appreciate this gag and she was fired immediately. And at number 1, Ryan Seacrest. Ryan was the man with the mic for a very long time, hosting not only talk shows, but reality game shows as well. Eventually though, he found a nice comfy gig interviewing celebrities on and off the red carpet. In 2018, things changed drastically after allegations of misconduct were brought forward by a former female employee named Susie Hardy. Susie was his personal hairstylist and the job was perfect for a very long time. But according to her, Ryan became very aggressive on several occasions, claiming that the only reason she never said anything was fear that she may lose the financial stability that the job had provided for herself and her daughter. In 2013, the situation finally ended when she expressed her concerns to someone at Human Resources and her employment was terminated. Now, while this was happening, Ryan was still employed as a host and a presenter, so he took to the red carpet that year to interview celebrities and he was met with cold shoulders and sarcastic comments. After the red carpet event, the decision was made to put Ryan on hold for a while until the investigation into the allegations were complete. 3 months later, they concluded that there was insufficient evidence to prove the claims and Ryan got reinstated. I'm not sure why a single mom would lie about something like that. I'm pretty sure Ryan's hiding some shady stuff, but who knows for sure?
First up, we have Saoirse Ronan and the awkward mistake. As a journalist, it's your job to get facts as correct as possible, but sometimes during certain circumstances, it's easy to get lost in the sauce. At the 2016 Oscars red carpet, an ABC News journalist was speaking to Saoirse when she had stopped to wave at someone, who happened to be writer Nick Hornby, who she had worked with for the film Brooklyn. She was nominated for Best Actress for her role in said film. The reporter confused the small interaction as something between family members and assumed Hornby was her father. When asked, Ronan obviously confirmed that he was the writer and not her father. It was a mild slip-up and not a big deal because, things like that happen. Honestly, this taught me to never assume and stick to my script or whatever to avoid any awkward run-ins like that. Next in line, we have Scarlett Johansson and Ryan Seacrest. Johansson was being interviewed at the 2017 Oscars red carpet when she was asked about her shoes. To clarify, Seacrest was asking if she had worn the heels she was wearing to the Oscars rehearsals that they have for the presenters. She responded with, "What a ridiculous question to ask," as it seemed to be so random for her. But Seacrest explained that he was asking because he had heard that fellow actress Halle Berry had done it. She accepted his response and continued to explain that she did not wear the heels, opting for comfortability. Up next is interviewer Jess Heigl calling Hidden Figures by the wrong name. It was around this time in 2017 when people were calling Hidden Figures Hidden Fences. The mistake started back at the Golden Globes when the movie Hidden Figures and Fences, very separate movies, were said in the same sentence, and that's how the mistake was made. The internet was already preparing themselves for reporters to make that same mistakes at the Oscars, and they were right. Editor-in-chief of People magazine, Jess Heigl messed it up when trying to compliment it as extraordinary alongside the film Moonlight, and was quick to correct himself, but it happened, and Twitter was there for it. Coming up is Tiffany Haddish's ultimate fangirl moment. So imagine you're at the Oscars and your idol is there. What do? Would you wait until they're within your closest vicinity, or do you seek them out? Tiffany Haddish was a woman on a mission as she wanted to greet Meryl Streep. In a video taken at the 90th Academy Awards, you can see Haddish waiting outside of the rope that was meant for the designated red carpet. With Streep just meters away, she probably contemplated her options before just going for it and climbing over the rope. I forgot to mention she was in a beautiful long gown as well, so to be able to witness that in real time must have been hilarious. Streep was seemingly preoccupied as Haddish steps in and literally blocks her path. The two make eye contact and they hug while exchanging words that are hard to make out. But nevertheless, Haddish got to have her chance with Streep and it was everything. I know some people would think this to be rude, which is why I included it, but hey, you do it too. Next on the list is Sacha Baron Cohen and his urn. Cohen arrived at the red carpet dressed head to toe in his costume for his character, Admiral General Aladdin. He arrived with staff personnel, 2 women who were obviously paid actors, and a cremation urn. Aside from his outfit, he was also completely in character too. That method acting really helping him out here. He was being interviewed by Ryan Seacrest, and Seacrest played into the bit as well. As he explained why he brought the urn, he inconspicuously lifted it and let it spill all over Seacrest. Clearly, it was a setup, probably some sort of marketing strategy from the movie's team. Up next again is Tiffany Haddish and her interview. She looked stunning in her custom-made green gown when a reporter asked if she had done a costume change. Perhaps slightly put off by the term costume, Haddish goes off to explain that it was not a costume but a luxury Dolce & Gabbana gown. The reality of the awkwardness sets in as the reporter tries to stealthily move on, but Haddish wants to reaffirm herself. She continues saying, "It's called an evening gown, darling." Watching the clip, you can tell the reporter regrets everything as she continues to play cool and admits defeat, but the damage was done and Haddish was not. She explained that the dress was paid by herself and that was what success looked like. Coming up is Heigl blanking out at the red carpet. Like I said, the hustle and bustle of these types of events are the partial reasons why reporters tend to mess things up. And it's fine, we're all human here, which is why I think E! News reporter Heigl can back me up on that statement. She arrived at the 2017 Oscars red carpet in a beautiful sheer and feathery dress. Perhaps it was so beautiful she ended up forgetting who actually designed it. Is it disrespectful to forget the name of the designer? I think it's an honest mistake, but that doesn't take away the minor embarrassment she probably felt while that was televised across national television. Up next, we have Ashley Graham's interview with Jason Momoa and Lisa Bonet. Momoa and his wife showed up to the 2019 Oscar Awards when it happened. When they were interviewed by model Ashley Graham, she requested that he give her a haka move. Haka refers to the many ceremonial dances from the Maori people. Mamoa is immediately hesitant, and it doesn't go unnoticed by Graham as she eggs him on to do it. Bonet is clearly unimpressed, offering some type of explanation that you can't hear what she's saying, but her husband cuts it off and gives Graham what she wants. The internet was not happy with this exchange. One user called her corny, while many others said that she was disrespecting his culture as he is from Hawaii and not New Zealand, where the Maori culture originates. At least he's familiar with some of the customs though, as he explained in a completely separate interview unrelated to the Oscars that his family's roots go back and forth from Hawaii and New Zealand at some point. Regardless, Graham pushing him to do that wasn't a good look for her. Coming up are the South Park creators and their red carpet looks. Creators of the hit cartoon comedy, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, confessed to everything that went down that evening in the year 2000. To put it shortly, they did not take anything seriously, despite Parker being nominated for an award. The original plan was to dress up in duck costumes, but out of fear they would be denied entry, they went for dresses to blend in with everyone else. So that's what they did. They dressed up in their dresses that were nods off to outfits Jennifer Lopez and Gwyneth Paltrow had worn previously, and to top it all off, were also extremely under the influence. They explained even stepping out of the vehicle was an experience due to their incapacitated state. They managed to get through the carpet and the interviews. They were smart and had it all planned out, vowing that they don't acknowledge the dresses, and if they were asked, to divert and avoid it at all costs. Next up is Dakota Johnson, low-key snapping at her mom. During the 2015 Academy Awards, Johnson brings her mother, fellow actress Melanie Griffith, as her date. Knowing Johnson and her collected bluntness, what happened shouldn't come off as surprising. While they were being interviewed together, Griffith was asked if she had watched her daughter's movie. She declined, saying it would be strange. The movie in question? 50 Shades of Grey, and we're all aware of the nature of that film. So to not want to see it for those reasons as a mother, it's totally understandable. Johnson cuts in and said it would be fine and she'll watch it one day. After all, it's just a movie since everything is fictional. When the reporter accepts this answer and reaffirms how well her daughter did in the film, Griffith continues and says, well, she's a really good actress, I don't need to see it to know how good she is, which sparked mild irritation from Johnson, who gets a little snappy and says she doesn't need to watch it. It's kind of awkward for the reporter as she comes in to soothe the awkward family interaction. While it might have been awkward to watch it unfold, mother-daughter bickering is more common than you'd think.
At number 10, Vincent Gallo. You always have to be mindful of the things that you say. Your words have a lot of impact and can either make someone's day or ruin it. You must be especially careful with your words when you're trying to get ahead in your career, because one wrong move can set you back significantly or even ruin your career altogether. This is what happened with actor Vincent Gallo, as after one too many failed interviews, his career went down the tubes. Vincent was known to be a little outspoken at times, and he had a history of speaking without a filter, but in 2000, during an interview with a New York Post Page 6 columnist, Vincent said some things about a former co-star that landed him in some hot water and effectively ended his career. During the interview, the columnist asked Vincent about Christina Ricci, who starred alongside Vincent in the 1998 film Buffalo 66, and when the actor spoke about his co-star, he didn't have the nicest things to say. He told the interviewer, quote, "It was okay when she wasn't drunk on the set. I think she's an alcoholic. It was either that or she was on cough syrup the whole time. I don't like her. She's an ungrateful C-word. But it was okay. She's basically a puppet. I told her what to do and she did it." End quote. After this interview, he faced some minor backlash for making such mean comments, and his film career just wasn't the same after that. At number 9, John Lennon. The Beatles were a huge hit at the height of their fame, but members of the band also faced scandal and backlash, as every celebrity does. John Lennon had his share of controversies, but one that did quite a lot of damage to the band's career for a little while was when he said that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. In 1966, John Lennon did an interview where he was asked all sorts of questions, like how he lives and his interests and so on, but his comments on Christianity is where things got heated. In the profile, he said, quote, "Christianity will go. It will vanish and shrink. I needn't to argue about that. I'm right and will be proved right. We're more popular than Jesus now. I don't know which will go first, rock and roll or Christianity. Jesus was alright, but his disciples were thick and ordinary. It's them twisting it that ruins it for me." End quote. Now, when this profile was first released in the UK, no one really thought anything of his comments about Christianity, but when the article was republished worldwide a few months later, things got messy when it hit the US. A radio station in Alabama got a hold of John's comments and proposed a ban on the Beatles, refusing to pay their music and smashed their records. This anti-Beatles mindset began to spread further, angering more people, until eventually Lennon apologized and things died down, making for a chaotic few months. Now, before I carry on with the list, I would like to ask you guys to consider leaving a big ol' thumbs up on this video if you're enjoying it so far, because it really does help the channel out. At number 8, Tom Cruise. After doing an interview with Matt Lauer back in 2005, Tom Cruise had a bit of a career setback that affected him for a while. During this interview, Tom made some pretty controversial comments about mental health, psychiatry, and made some harsh criticisms about actress Brooke Shields. All of this was caused by Tom's belief in Scientology and the fact that he doesn't believe in medication or therapy. While on the Today Show, Tom and Matt were having a discussion about how the actor criticized Brooke Shields for taking antidepressants for her postpartum depression, and Tom would keep trying to shut down anything Matt would say to defend psychiatry, also going on to say, quote, "You don't know the history of psychiatry, I do," end quote. A lot of people took offense to the comments that he made on this topic, saying that it was uncalled for and that someone's mental health shouldn't be discussed, and so he lost some support from fans. Between that and his position in the Church of Scientology, he lost a lot of popularity, leading to some box office bombs that affected his career for a while afterwards. At number 7, Miles Teller. Actor Miles Teller is a very good actor, but apparently he kinda sucks when it comes to doing interviews. He was set up to have a very promising career after starring in the 2014 award-winning film Whiplash, but after a series of underwhelming interviews, his career started to decline. The first of his interview bombs came in 2014 when he spoke badly of his fellow actors, where he said, quote, "I feel like a lot of actors of my generation are not proper actors. I want to break out of that whole group of actors in their early 20s and really start to put stuff down that lets you know I take this seriously," unquote. Also in that same interview, he spoke harshly of actor John Cusack, where he said, quote, "I guess we look alike. We did some similar movies. He was a leading man that wasn't traditionally good looking, who was offbeat and quirky but confident. I get it, but I don't want his career," end quote. The more bad interviews he gave, the more people started to see Miles as arrogant, cocky, and rude, which certainly did not help his career. At number 6, John Mayer. I feel like we really don't hear much about John Mayer these days, and that could very well be due to a 2010 interview that tanked his career and made him receive a lot of hate. During an interview with Playboy magazine, John made a lot of rude, crude, and racist comments that ruined his public image. At one point during the interview, John dissed his ex-girlfriend Jennifer Aniston and also spoke in too much detail about his other ex-girlfriend Jessica Simpson, and honestly, I would rather not repeat what he said because it was really gross. On top of that, John also proceeded to say the N-word several times throughout the interview, as though it was the cherry on top of this whole mess. After facing a lot of backlash for what was said during the interview, he tweeted an apology, but his career just wasn't really the same. At number 5, Alex Pettyfer. Actor Alex Pettyfer was riding a pretty good wave of success after starring in I Am Number 4 and Magic Mike, but behind the scenes he was ruffling feathers in Hollywood after he was described as, quote, "surly, arrogant, and disrespectful" by The Hollywood Reporter. This entertainment news source exposed what Alex was really like after someone who worked with him on set came forward to share their horror stories with the actor. At one point, Alex's career took a pretty big hit, but things became worse after Alex did an interview with V-Man magazine that really set his career back. During this interview, he called out the entirety of Hollywood, where he said, quote, "LA is growing on me a little bit, but it's still a hole. I think it's this insidious pool where nearly everyone lives in fear. Geographically, it's fantastic, but socially, it's disgusting. I wish they'd run all the C words out," end quote. After these harsh words and the fact that he's a nightmare to work with, Alex's career just wasn't the same. He wasn't welcomed back to reprise his role in the Magic Mike sequel, and since then, he hasn't really been a part of any major projects in the industry. At number 4, Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf has been having a pretty rough time in Hollywood lately. A few months ago, he was facing backlash after his ex-girlfriend, FKA Twigs, issued a lawsuit against the actor for physically harming her, but before that, Shia had also faced backlash for his unruly behavior both on and off set. What really did him in at one point was an interview he did back in 2008 where he blasted Steven Spielberg after working on Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This movie itself got mixed reviews at the time of its release, but Shia criticized the film's director, and that's when the hate began for the actor. He told the Los Angeles Times, quote, "I think the audience is pretty intelligent. I think they know when you've made crap, and I I think if you don't acknowledge it, then why do they trust you the next time you're promoting a movie, end quote. He also went on to say, quote, I'll probably get a call, but Spielberg needs to hear this. I love him. I love Steven. I have a relationship with Steven that supersedes our business work, and believe me, I talk to him often enough to know that I'm not out of line. And I would never disrespect the man. I think he's a genius. I think he's given me my whole life. He's done so much great work that there's no need for him to feel vulnerable about one film. But when you drop the ball, you drop the ball, end quote. Shia ripped on the director later on in 2016 as well, but at that point, the damage was already done. Looks like you can't criticize one of Hollywood's greatest directors and come out unscathed. At number 3, Wilmer Valderrama. Back in 2006, That 70s Show actor Wilmer Valderrama was a guest on Howard Stern's show, and he said some things that he surely regretted saying because after this interview, his career took a pretty big hit. While on the show, the actor shared some information about his private life that frankly, nobody asked for and was very inappropriate. The actor exposed a lot of details about the people that he slept with, going on to reveal that he had slept with Mandy Moore, and even described the experience that no one really needed to know about. He also went on to rate his relationship with actress Jennifer Love Hewitt, and again, nobody needed that information. Wilmer just really exposed a lot of personal information about himself, but faced scrutiny because of how the people he talked about were impacted. A lot of people pointed out how the comments he made were uncalled for, uncomfortable, and inappropriate. It took the actor years to issue an apology for what he said during that interview, but by that time, the damage to his career was already done, and he never quite bounced back. At number 2, Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen was riding a pretty good wave back when he was a star of 2.5 Men, but after his horrible interview on 2020, his career was destroyed and he never fully recovered. After having a hugely successful career, making millions of dollars per season on 2.5 Men, actor Charlie Sheen started to have a downward spiral. Everything sort of came crashing down for him after the interview where he ranted about the 2.5 Men creator, Chuck Lorre. This interview was all over the place with Charlie behaving frantically, going on tangents, and even calling Chuck Lorre, quote, a turd and a clown. This interview was all over the news because it was chaotic, Charlie was put on blast, and his career just came to a screeching halt. Not only that, but as a result of the comments Charlie made during the interview, he was fired from 2.5 Men, and that was a pretty big deal since this is how he was pulling in so much money. The actor pretty much hit rock bottom after that and never really made his return. And finally, at number 1, Megan Fox. Megan Fox is only now starting to make her way back to Hollywood after she was essentially blacklisted from the industry after she faced backlash for speaking badly about Michael Bay in an interview. Megan criticized the Transformers director during a 2009 interview with Wonderland magazine when she was asked about what it was like to work with Michael Bay. In response to the question, Megan told the source, quote, he's a nightmare to work with, but when you get him away from set, he's not in director mode. I kinda really enjoy his personality because he's so awkward, so hopelessly awkward. He has no social skills at all and it's endearing to watch him. He's vulnerable and fragile in real life, then on set he's a tyrant. Shia and I almost die when we make Transformers movies. He has you do some really insane things that insurance would never let you do, end quote. Because of what she said, Michael Bay fired her from future Transformers films and made Hollywood turn against her by telling them that Megan was a nightmare to work with. She had a hard time making it in Hollywood until recently when she came out to reveal the truth about how she was being treated in the industry. She's on her way back to Hollywood's good graces, but for a while there, her career was ruined. At number 10, we have the Joker interview. Now, I know this interview didn't take place in real life, but it was a late night show, so go with me on this one. For those who've never seen the movie, first of all, go watch it. Secondly, spoiler alert. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the late night zinger at the end of the movie. The movie's protagonist Arthur is absolutely obsessed with the late night talk show, The Murray Franklin Show, so when he gets the opportunity to be on the show after making waves in a comedy club, he's thrilled. Maybe a little too thrilled. He then hatches a plan to do a stand-up act for Murray, and the punchline really makes your heart stop. Once he gets his shining moment on stage, he pulls his punchline and a gun? He shoots Murray and chaos ensues. Now that's what I call ruining a career, am I right? I'm not funny. In at number 9, Lilly Singh. Last year, YouTube sensation Lilly Singh debuted her new late night talk show, A Little Late with Lilly. But just 2 weeks after the premiere, Lilly was already facing backlash, forcing her to apologize for a joke that she made on the show. One of Lilly's first guests, Jessica Alba, shared images of her kids where Lilly decided to make a jab after seeing the children with towels on their head, saying, quote, "Don't worry, it's just like my Punjabi friends," end quote. This joke was in reference to the towels looking like turbans. When Lily's fans expressed their concern with the joke, she stated that Alba's appearance was the first tape, so her nervous energy must have led to bad improv. This started a downward spiral as the show's ratings started to plummet, and not much traction has picked up since then. Coming in hot at 8, Courtney Love on Letterman. When singer-songwriter Courtney Love appeared on Letterman in 2004, her interview would be one for the ages. In her most unforgettable interview, Courtney Love famously pulled up her shirt and flashed the late-night host. When asked years later why she did it, her response was that she was inspired when Drew Barrymore had done it on the same show. She said, quote, "Drew Barrymore had done it when she was 19, and I was so out of my mind when I did it, I thought I was 19, but I was actually 39. End quote. Love also gives reference to her Letterman days when she would pull all kinds of stunts for attention, mainly due to her drug abuse and mental health relapses. Watching clips of her Letterman days interviews honestly makes me so sad to see her in such a state. She has really grown since then after getting the help that she needs. Courtney voices her struggles with her past and how it damaged her image in the process. I just hope that she can stay in a good place. In at 7, Jim Cramer. CNBC host Jim Cramer appeared on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart in March 2009. He was set to appear on the talk show after days of continuous, highly publicized criticism of the CNBC network by Jon over Wall Street greed and the CNBC's role in glorifying it. This feud came about shortly after the market crash of 2008 in the US. Stewart criticized Jim and CNBC because he claimed that instead of investigating the crash like they were obligated to as journalists, the network simply took any information given to them and blew up the story. Stewart found that to be a disservice to the people, especially after the economic collapse that affected so many others. Throughout the interview, Stewart proceeded to rip on Cramer, and honestly, I don't blame him. Investigative journalism is supposed to uncover the truth, but instead the network dropped the ball and led to no one blowing the whistle on the situation, resulting in the economic disaster. In an interview in 2011, Cramer revealed that the words exchanged during the interview still hurt him. This hurt his career as a reliable journalist, so I guess he's been served a slice of humble pie. Number 6, David Letterman and Joe Halderman. In 2009 on his late night talk show, David Letterman got real with his audience. He revealed to the public that he had been involved in affairs with some coworkers and that he had been a part of a $2 million blackmail scheme. A whole $2 million, people. Do you know how many chicky nugs you can buy with that? He told audiences that if he didn't pay up, his blackmailer would reveal his secrets to the public. But rather than get swallowed up in the scandal, he faced it head on. This subsequently led investigators to arrest former CBS News producer Joe Halderman for attempted extortion of David Letterman. Joe's reputation took a big hit after his arrest and incarceration, but at least now we know, don't mess with David Letterman. For number 5, we have Madonna on Letterman. Pop icon Madonna made waves during her 1994 interview with David Letterman. As she was introduced to the show, Letterman made some crass remarks at her and made some sexualized jokes about her. Madonna was not having it, no sir, no ma'am. Instead, she decided to retaliate against Letterman in the interview, where she proceeded to drop some landfill-worthy language, amounting to a grand total of 14 F-bombs. 14! The pop singer also made some crass remarks about Letterman towards the audience, saying things like, "I gave him a pair of my underpants and he won't smell them." Ew? On top of that, Madonna stayed on well after her time slot was supposed to end, resulting in producers having to bump the other guest slots. I guess that when Madonna gets petty, she gets petty. This controversial interview led to several FCC complaints and some harsh words by Entertainment Weekly being thrown her way, and the whole kerfuffle knocked her down a few pegs. Many people thought that Madonna's career was deader than dead after that stunt, but miraculously, she found her way out of the rubble and tried to forget about the ordeal moving forward. In at 4, Andy Dick on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Andy Dick and Ivanka Trump were guests on Jimmy Kimmel Live back in 2007. During the interview, Andy was being a bit of a and getting a little too friendly with Ivanka as he was seen creepily touching her body. It even got so bad to the point where Kimmel had to tell him to stop and even get up from his chair in an effort to stop him from touching her. All of this to no avail because he just wouldn't stop. Mr. Dick, fitting name, right, was later escorted from the interview by members of security because he just wouldn't stop harassing Ivanka. Now, if you know anything about Andy Dick, then you know he's infamous for assault allegations and even jail time as a result. This interview was just one of the many instances of assault that follows him to this day. Needless to say, he's got a poor reputation. Coming in close at number 3, Joaquin Phoenix on Letterman. The Joker actor tried to play his own joke on the Letterman show back in 2009. Joaquin acted his way through the interview, trying to give off a dazed sort of image. During his time on the late night show, audiences watched as Phoenix acted loopy and out of it as he stumbled over his words and just straight up looked like he took too much NyQuil and tried to fight sleep, you know? Anyway, he just ended up looking straight cringy. Joaquin has since apologized to Letterman for his strange bit, but that interview dented his image a bit, and has stuck with him ever since. Almost at the end of number 2, Crispin Glover on Letterman. The Back to the Future actor became infamous for his little stunt on the Letterman late night show back in 1987. He was invited onto the show to promote his newest film, River's Edge, but upon appearing for his interview, things sort of went sideways. Dressed in a wig, hippie pants, and platform shoes, Glover babbled on, reading clips about himself from the newspaper and rambling on nonsensically, and even getting aggressive almost to the point of him kicking Letterman in the face. No one knows for sure if the whole show was just a bit or if he was high on more of that coveted no snow. But one thing's for certain, it was hella entertaining to watch. Coming to a close at number 1, Farrah Fawcett on Letterman. In 1997, Charlie's Angels star Farrah Fawcett took audience members on a wild ride during her interview on the Letterman show. The actress seemed really out of it during the whole interview. Throughout her time on the show, Fawcett was stumbling over her words, being incoherent at times, and even telling very lengthy stories that mostly didn't make much sense. To make things worse for the famed celebrity, she didn't even understand when Letterman was making jabs at her. It honestly didn't look like she was paying much attention to what was happening around her. Many people suspected that she was high during the interview, but one thing's for sure, her character was never the same after that.
In at number 10, Tom Hiddleston. Back in June of 2016, it was announced that America's favorite villain, Mr. Tom Hiddleston, was romantically involved with Taylor Swift. They were dubbed a celebrity name of Hiddle Swift, and all seemed, well and good. Although in August of 2016, they were fighting over his scheduling with Thor Ragnarok in Australia. Then by September of 2016, they were over and both sides alleged that they dumped the other one. Tom said it was because he wanted to go more public with their relationship, and Taylor Swift alluded to another reason for it ending in a song of hers, I guess. Either way, Tom was a bit shaken up by the whole situation, and during an interview with GQ magazine, he kind of burned himself. He was trying to distract from the topic of Swift by sharing his recipe for bolognese, but Tom still managed to talk way too much about Taylor Swift. Even after the interview had finished, he apparently visited the reporter's door at 6 a.m. to further clarify things that he had said about her in the interview. In at number 9, Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton not only became famous for being the great-granddaughter of the guy who created Hilton Hotels, but she also invented the idea of influencers. She would tell the paparazzi where she was going to be and then end up all over page 6 whenever she did something crazy at a nightclub. Although she also had a brief stint acting in reality TV shows. In fact, for a while, she believed that she was the world's top reality TV star, even though her former friend Kim Kardashian was kinda on the come up. During one interview with ABC in 2011, she was doing her very best to stay calm as a reporter grilled her with questions meant to discount her worth in society. Then Paris was asked by the reporter if she felt like her career was over, and in response, she just walked right out of the interview. People were already feeling that her career was done, but nobody, I guess, had the heart to tell her, so when she found out just as much, she left the interview, which kind of answered the question for us. In at number 8, Kathie Lee Gifford. Kathie is best known for her 15-year run on the talk show Live with Regis and Kathie Lee, which she co-hosted with Regis Philbin. She has also done some acting in a few films, but her primary focus has been working for live entertainment news shows. Although after she maybe had one too many glasses of wine, I think they do a Today Show happy hour, she conducted a very embarrassing interview with Martin Short. Martin was coming on the Today Show to promote, and it looks like Kathie didn't do her research beforehand. Martin's wife had passed away 2 years prior to the interview, and Gifford had no clue. She threw multiple questions about his wife and his relationship, but at no point did he have a chance to actually correct her. Although right before the commercial break, he definitely had to update her. She apparently profusely apologized for this big gaffe, but her career was already tanked at that point. And if not her career, at least her reputation. In at number 7, Crispin Glover. While Crispin Glover has never really been considered a typical leading man, he has certainly distinguished himself as one of the more intriguing personalities in Hollywood. His unusual characters and personal projects have inspired a cult-like following that has dubbed him both a madman and a genius. However, an interview back in 1987 stunted his career a little bit, and we wouldn't see him on many late-night interviews for a while. While speaking with David Letterman, Crispin showed up as Ruben. Ruben was a character that he was portraying in an upcoming film called Ruben and Ed. Although not a single soul told Letterman that this was the intended plan, so he was completely surprised when it happened. Sometimes that works, but in this case, it was a disaster. The entire interview was just Dave trying to keep up with Crispin and his Reuben rants, but ultimately ended in Letterman just walking out of the interview. In at number 6, Gary Coleman. First and foremost, rest in peace, Gary Coleman. It was terrible to see this great actor's career be taken down and then ridiculed when he had to go get a regular job. Before he passed, Gary did an interview in 2010 with The Insider, and things got very heated. One of those hosts started asking him questions about his ex-wife Susan Price, but Coleman did not take this well. He began yelling expletives at the mortified host as he immediately departed the interview. It must have been a very touchy subject, but this is also a reminder of why it's important to brief guests with the questions that they'll be asked. These curveballs from reporters rarely lead to anything good, and Gary's interview is kind of proof of that. In at number 5, Cara Delevingne. Let's just say her dry British humor was not really received by these happy-go-lucky morning news anchors at CBS Sacramento. At the start of the interview, she was asked some very dumb questions. For example, the film Paper Towns was based on a book, so they asked her if she had read the book, and then immediately after made a snide comment about her probably not having enough time to read. Now, Cara obviously takes offense to this, judging by her body language, but instead decides to flip it into a joke, saying that she didn't even read the script, just winged it.
No, I never read the book or the script, actually. I kind of winged it.
And the interviewers actually take this as factual for a moment before her laughing kind of cuts the tension. That's not even the most awkward part of this interview, though.
I think it probably is us.
Yeah.
Well, then on that note...
We figured as much.
We'll let you go then. How about that?
All right.
We'll let you go take a little nap, maybe get a Red Bull. How about that?
After one interviewer asked her why she isn't as excited as her other interviews, she remarks that it's very early and that she thought it was going well, so again, jokingly, she said, "It must be you." And the lady in the middle, oh my god, she sounded so bitter. "We'll let you take a little nap and have a Red Bull? How about that?" Yes. How about that level of professional journalism? Good morning, Sacramento. Although ever since this interview, we haven't really seen Cara in any more movies, and even the ones that we have seen her in, it was like, yeah, whatever. In at number 4, Robert Pattinson. When the Twilight series was at its peak, Rob had to do a ton of press to promote the film, and his agent made it expressly clear to every single interviewer not to mention his rumored relationship. People were already speculating that Pattinson was dating co-star Kristen Stewart, but they definitely wanted to keep things as private as possible. However, when he went on air with Ryan Seacrest, things went sideways. As soon as Seacrest started asking about his rumored relationship, Rob's agent gave him the cue to leave the interview. Now, this didn't exactly destroy his career, but it certainly put a bad light on the actor for being kind of so dodgy with questions. If he had have just stayed in the interview and just told Ryan that he didn't want to talk about it, I bet Ryan would have just moved on. Seacrest has been in that business for so long that he knows how to keep things professional. But I guess he missed the memo on not talking about the relationship thing.
What can you tell them about it?
I also just love that you can see his agent in the back giving the old wrap it up signal to Ryan, and he is definitely ignoring her. In at number 3, Jim Carrey. While at the New York Fashion Week in 2017, Jim Carrey made a rare appearance, and while walking down the red carpet, he did his best to avoid an interview with E! News. At first, he kind of tried to twirl around a few times and not really stand still, hoping that would work, but man, she was persistent. Carrey then says that he wanted to find the most meaningless event that he could go to, and that's how he ended up there. The interviewer tries to keep the integrity of the event high and claims that it's a celebration of icons, for which Jim says, "Icons don't exist. I don't believe in personalities. I don't believe you exist, but there is a wonderful fragrance in the air." Before departing from this awkward interview, he leaves her with this nugget of truth.
It's not our world.
None of this is real?
Nope.
It was a while before we saw Jim Carrey again after that, but we're sure he wants it that way. It probably made keeping the Sonic live-action film quiet a lot easier. In at number 2, Mel Gibson. While promoting his film Edge of Darkness in a 2010 interview with WGN-TV, Mel Gibson appeared like he really didn't want to be there. The best part was that he wasn't even physically there. He just was appearing via satellite because it was probably the fastest way to do this press run. Although among all of the questions that annoyed the actor, it was when he dove into Gibson's drinking that kind of really set him off. The reporter got even more bold by asking him about his previous anti-Semitic remarks, to which Mel replied that was 4 years ago and he had already apologized for that. And the reporter, sensing that Mel was about to cuss him out on live air, he kind of shifted back to promoting the film. Good move. Although Mel Gibson thought that the interview had disconnected, which resulted in some very troubling remarks to air live.
Thanks a lot for joining us, Mel. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Last but certainly not least on our number one spot, Courtney Love. Courtney Love has been a mess forever. She does not handle interviews with any ounce of grace, and her crashing an interview with Madonna kind of proves my point. Back at the 1995 MTV VMAs, the interviewer was engaged in a discussion with Madonna when he notices Courtney Love yelling from down below. He then invites her onto the interview platform, even at the behest of Madonna, and things immediately turn to the worst case scenario. She starts drunkenly throwing small items at Madonna, and then she kneels down on the ground, and at that point Madonna just walks off the stage. Courtney then stays and hijacks the entire interview, going on more drunken rants and just being generally all over the place. I mean, literally all over the place. And it turns out the guy should have just listened to Madonna and had security keep Courtney back. Then we wouldn't have had this. In at number 10, Kanye West. Now, I know what you're thinking. If you're a fan of Kanye West, then you will most likely hit that dislike button and comment something like, "What are you talking about? Kanye still has a career." I get that. But bear with me on this one. While he was on the show back in 2016, he went on a rant that not only left Ellen speechless, but also lasted for 6 minutes. He talked about everything as well, from race to his constant tweeting, and much of the interview wasn't even able to air on television because of just how off-brand he was for the demographic of that show. By that I mean that he said a lot of swear words. That was probably one of his more calmer moments, but just 6 months after this interview, Kanye's mental health really started to deteriorate. Dispatch audio from the day that Kanye West was hospitalized for exhaustion reveals that authorities were called to the scene of a psychiatric emergency, which makes what he said in that interview feel a little more dark than inspiring. In at number 9, Wendy Williams. Both Wendy and Ellen host daytime talk shows, so it's natural that there would be sort of a bit of tension between them, I guess, or, sibling rivalry on Netflix. I don't know if that's a thing, but if it is, these guys have it. Both Wendy and Ellen host daytime talk shows, so it's natural that there would be a bit of tension between them. Although Wendy Williams is typically the first to throw some shade Ellen's way and has done so numerous times. One of the more awkward times that she tried to insult Ellen was when she plugged her PETA ad by acknowledging that Ellen was vegan. Then she asked her, "How do you live without bacon?" Which forced Ellen DeGeneres to reply that she thinks pigs are smart, so that means Wendy Williams was talking about PETA in order to shame someone for being vegan. I don't really understand her. Her next Ellen insult was a bit more on the nose, but still a bad joke. When she came on the show, they played a game of heads up, and Williams got to insult Ellen just one more time. Following this, Wendy Williams' reputation definitely took a bit of a hit, but with Ellen's ship now going down, I bet Wendy is quite pleased. In at number 8, Sean Hayes. Right at the top of the episode, Will and Grace star Sean Hayes wasted no time insulting Ellen. In what is now referred to as the Battle of the Gays, Sean repeatedly calls her Helen from the moment that the episode starts, which clearly starts to bother her as it totally botches the opening dialogue for the episode. From there, it just gets worse. He tossed his ring into the mug on the table as a joke because Ellen complained that it hurt her when he tapped her knee. Sean then proceeds to pluck the ring out of his drink and then flick the excess liquids all over Ellen. Ellen then tried to transition the conversation by talking about how long Will and Grace has been on the air, and then Sean then takes another jab at Ellen by saying that it's been running longer than her own show. And sure, it's great that he's been on a long-running show, but that's about all that he's done after this disastrous interview. In at number 7, Blake Shelton. Ellen is notorious for meddling in the relationships of celebrities, and she's always prying for more personal details and desperately trying to convince her guests that they need to get married. I mean, she bought Jennifer Lopez a clock with her and A-Rod kissing on it, and shortly after that pair got married. So when Blake Shelton came on the show, she tried to do the same thing. However, unbeknownst to Ellen, Blake never received the clock at the end of the show. So when he came back on the show and Ellen asked him again if he had plans to marry Gwen Stefani, he just kind of let her have it. And I love that he called her out on using the clock as just a prop to harass her guests to get married. Although his singing career still continues, his relationship ended in divorce due to irreconcilable differences. I wonder if Ellen had a role in that. In at number 6, David Arquette. When David appeared on The Ellen Show alongside comedian Wanda Sykes, they played a very uncomfortable game of Never Have I Ever. At first, David seemed to just be really excited to be there, but as the interview segment went on, fans started to worry about him. Back in 2011, David made a very public announcement that he was checking himself into rehab for alcoholism, so when he came on the show a few years later, people were worried that he had fallen off the wagon again. As he misspoke in the segment, he pleaded with Ellen to cut that part out of the show, for which Ellen just said no. show. She then joked about how it was meant to be educational, and I don't know if he was drunk for this episode, but not too many big productions have taken a chance on him following this interview. In at number 5, Jennifer Lawrence. Ellen was put in an awkward situation during her interview with Jennifer Lawrence in 2012. What began as Ellen asking Jennifer about her new cat quickly spiraled into trans jokes that Ellen didn't know how to deal with. Lawrence explained that she always imagined cats as being female and dogs as being male, so when she bought her female cat and it began acting like a boy, she renamed it to Chaz Bono. And for those of you who completely missed that jab, Chaz is the transgender son of Cher and the late Sonny Bono. What followed next was just bizarre too. They had a slideshow of the cat going that was just supposed to line up with her story, but that curveball joke really put Ellen in a weird spot, and the audience had to watch her kind of tiptoe around it into a new topic. Now, this didn't exactly end Jennifer's career as an actor, but it certainly gave her a bad reputation in Hollywood. You can consider that a career destroyed. In at number 4, Giada De Laurentiis. The 2017 cooking segment is now a viral disaster for all to watch online. It was pretty much a disaster right from the jump, and having Nicole Kidman on a guest really didn't help. Giada was teaching both Nicole and Ellen how to make some of her favorite celebrity chef recipes. At least that was the intended plan. Instead, Giada made sexual innuendos about rice balls, insinuating that Ellen's never handled anything like that, which even slightly insults Nicole Kidman, who reminds Giada that this is a family show. However, Giada doesn't stop with the insults. From there, she quickly pivoted to insulting Ellen's lack of culinary skills, even saying that her rice balls look like dog food. After those few insults, Ellen basically bailed on the entire segment. She started eating the food on the table and overall just roasting how bad it was, with Nicole Kidman joining in. And that was the last time that we heard about Giada De Laurentiis. In at number 3, Caitlyn Jenner. The conversation began very lighthearted between newly transitioned Caitlyn Jenner and Ellen. She praised Jenner for her work in the transgender movement and her importance in that role, but when she tried to make Caitlyn explain her previous views on gay marriage, things got tense. At least Caitlyn stood up for herself and explained that her opinion has changed over time. I mean, she literally changed her entire identity, and Ellen is still asking if her opinions are the same. Clearly, Jenner's views and opinions have changed slightly, but she noted that because she's a traditionalist, she still can't understand why people don't want gay marriage. I'm not saying she's right, by the way. I'm simply pointing out a moment where a celebrity insulted Ellen and it kind of trashed her career a little bit. In at number 2, Jessica Simpson. Trainwreck is perhaps the best way to sum up this interview between Jessica Simpson and Ellen. Much like when David Arquette was on the show, people also thought that Jessica was drunk. I realized that she hadn't been on the show for 4 years, but it felt like she had never been in a conversation before. She would say something, and then as Ellen was responding, Simpson would stop her, go back on what she said, and then stumble a bit, and then change her answer. It was really weird. Like, you're on Ellen. You're not being grilled by Chris Hansen in your kitchen. She must have been extremely nervous, but following this interview, her career never really saw an uptick that most hoped for after appearing on the show. The Ellen bump, I believe they call it. Last but certainly not least, in our number 1 spot, Ellen DeGeneres. Dakota Johnson's appearance on Ellen will go down in history as a key moment that led to the downfall of Ellen herself. It really opened up everyone's eyes as to how little she cares about her guests or the show itself anymore. If you don't know what happened, the last time that Dakota Johnson was on the show, Ellen reamed her out for not getting a birthday invitation, so when the following birthday rolled around, Dakota made sure to invite Ellen. Although Ellen missed the party and then had the audacity to ask her again why she never received an invite, thus leading to Dakota calling Ellen out in front of everyone for lying. Ellen was busy getting chummy with former US President George Bush during Dakota's birthday, and thus began the slow ending to her career.